Welcome, this is Jen, the Liberty Lion, and in this video I just want to show you real quick some stuff on defense and defense. And what do I mean by that? What I mean by that is that in the Constitution of the United States for the United States of America, we see that the Constitution spells defense with a C and not an S here. Common defense. And this is from uscode.house.gov under the organic laws. I've looked all through this Constitution, and the spellings and the punctuation and capitalization is the same as the facsimile copy that I have from, I believe it's the Library of Congress or I forget where I bought it from. It was one of the museums or the libraries in Washington. It was a facsimile, handwritten facsimile of the Constitution. So this is accurate. Defense with a C is accurate. Defense with a C is a French word. Defense with an S is a Latin word. Defense with a C has a different meaning than defense with an S. Defense with a C means to fortify, which is what the government, the federal government at the federal level, was supposed to do on the federal lands in all the states. Was they were supposed to build fortifications for military purposes, for protection of freedom, sovereignty, liberty, independence, and that this was supposed to result in tranquility, general welfare, blessings of liberty, posterity, etc. And we see that the United States and their representatives, we the people are the representatives of the United States being the federal lands. So the representatives of the federal lands were supposed to do all these things for the United States of America, or the American citizens who are nationals. So let's move on. Defense. So we know that George Washington was reading the Law of Nations. The Law of Nations was written by a Frenchman, Emmerich de Vattals. He was in France, but he was in Switzerland, but he spoke French. And this Law of Nations is also mentioned in the Constitution, Article 1, Section 8, in one of the clauses there. And all through this book, it does not use defense with an S. Defense with an S is not used. It's always defense with a C. So let's look at a couple of the words in the use of defense, meaning to fortify or to fortify yourself or defend yourself against an attack. Alliance concluded for the defense of the king and the royal family, because this Law of Nations was written in the 1700s. This is a copy that was translated from French, and I think later it was translated to German, and then it was translated to English in the 1800s. So this is the 1800s edition. And here we have other allowable means of defense with a C against a formidable power. Obviously, the founders wanted us to be able to defend ourselves, meaning to fortify ourselves against oncoming attacks, but not to seek vengeance against other people, which is what the government, the federal government, has been doing for a very long time, including on its own citizens. And if you read anything by the guy who writes about Lincoln, I forget his name, Di Lorenzo, he writes how Lincoln took vengeance on American citizens in whatever name or whatever reason, to free the slaves or what have you, was still a breach of the trust. Justifiable self-defense is no breach of the treaty. Okay, that was justifiable self-defense is no breach of the treaty. A mutual defense against all external violence. This is the United States have gathered together for their mutual defense against external violence. That's what the United States has done in the Constitution. It owes this also to the members in particular, in consequence of the very act of association, for those who compose a nation are united for their defense and common advantage. Contracts with NATO are against the Constitution. Furthermore, a delegated power cannot be delegated, so the federal government had no right to delegate any power to NATO or any other institution. Upon this principle, it has been established that for national defense in war, it is legal to pull down or injure the property of any private individual. Only in an act of war for the defense of the nation. The cares, the employments of a sovereign are of much greater importance than those of the tribunes were, and not less dangerous if he be not provided with a powerful defense. And the state itself wholly taken up with the defense of its liberty against the Spaniards, had not the means of attempting it. So continuously through this book, and you can download this book, The Law of Nations, from the internet. And this is the last time that the word occurs on page 654. Other allowable means of defense against a formidable power is written with a C throughout the Law of Nations. And I don't know if you noticed or not, but this is also called the natural law. It's important to note that this is considered law of nature, so it's in harmony with nature. The law in harmony with nature is lawful. When man writes contracts with other men, they're called legal and they're fictions. They're not lawful, they're fictions. Fictions are supposed to conform with the natural law. Oftentimes they don't. This is a nice little dictionary. It's called Treasury of Knowledge. It's got the definitions simplified. Maunder's Treasury of Knowledge, also available for free on the internet. You can download it. It's got some prints here. Samuel Maunder, new edition. Let's see, 1851. And I like this book because it's simple and it's easy for even children to read. Okay, so I look up defense with an S. I'll click on that for you. And nothing comes up. The reason why it's already gone through is because I had already looked for it. So defense with an S. Nothing happens. Nothing comes up because defense with an S is not in this book. It's a Latin word and it means vengeance. Now we spell it with a C. And I'll wait for it, and many words will come up, and it's various definitions and uses. Definition and use is not always quite the same thing. Many times words are used in a way that doesn't quite go along with the definition, but it's the best we can do when we're trying to describe a situation. Mote, a small particle of matter. This defense goes with, here, moat, a deep trench filled with water for defense. That's the way they do it in this dictionary. They put the word, if it runs long, it goes to the top or the bottom. Wall of defense. I'm not sure what this word is. Sometimes these are hard to read. It's French. Trees cut down and so laid as to form a defense for troops. They have these little sayings at the top and the bottom on the sides. A faithful friend is a strong defense. A faithful friend is not for vengeance. A faithful friend is one who will come to your defense. Allies, states which have something into a league for their mutual defense. I think that might be erected or entered into a league. Now, a league of friendship for defense is called a confederation. Bad people can confederate themselves and good people can confederate themselves. The states became allies when they wrote the Articles of Confederation for their mutual defense. And the Constitution, in my opinion, and in the opinion of many others, was in fact a amendment to the Articles of Confederation. But when the amendment was proposed, they were in the middle of just trying to get over the war. And there were a lot of problems that the states were having. And they had to send people to a meeting, which they had to ride by horse or walk. And things just weren't easy. So it took them over a year. And some people say the fact that it took them over a year to come to meet for the writing of the Constitution, they claim that as a fact that it's not an amendment to the Articles of Confederation, but they proposed it. And actually, I think they proposed it a second time, a year after the first proposal. And then they met some point in time after that to write the amendment to the Articles of Confederation called the Constitution. Apology, a defense, an excuse. That's what I always tell people. Don't give me excuses. Don't apologize. It's just an excuse. It's just a way to try to get me to let my guard down. Barrier, a boundary, a defense. You want to show somebody you really care about them. Try not to do the thing again. Try not to hurt them again so that you don't have to apologize. Breastwork, a parapet or work thrown up for defense, breast high. I've looked through a lot of different dictionaries, and the older ones have only defense with a C. They don't have a defense with an S. And I've also read in a book on orthography that the Old French, which was the Norse, which is made up of, the Anglo-Saxon, which was made up of a lot of different languages, used the French and the Norse ideas of court and law. And that's the language they used. They used the Norse and the Gothic origins of the language, those languages, for the erection of their courts and law system. So originally, courts and law were of a French origin, according to an orthography book that I recently was reviewing. Coverture, a shelter, a defense. Defensive. Now see, you have S, defensive, because they've added a suffix. So they changed the C to S. But still, there is no defense with an S in the book until you add a certain suffix. And then when you add certain suffixes, the letter before sometimes changes. Those are spelling rules. But defense on its own with an S does not exist and did not exist at the time. at least not for the purposes of law and courts, because they were using French, Old French, which was Norse. C, fencing is also with a C. Fencing school, that's when you fight with a sword, right? Fortifier, they were building forts. Article 1, Section 8, Clause 17. The erection of forts. One who erects works for defense. Fortify, to strengthen, to encourage. Okay, it goes on and on. I won't read all of these to you. You can get this book, Treasury of Knowledge, on archive.org. And it's there for free to download. And I like this book, and I like this book for my homeschool child because it's very simple. The definitions are simple. The definitions are simply the breakdown of the words, not the various uses, because it can get confusing when you're looking at the uses versus the actual definition. Okay, so the Treasury of Knowledge, this is part 1. And it's got grammar up front, a dictionary, and then it's even got, I think, some legal stuff towards the bottom. I don't remember exactly. Scriptures, scripture proper names. Got some classical dictionary. It's got some small thing on Freemasonry in here. Okay, it's got these things. I don't know what that says. Here it says Beningatus Fons. Okay, that's like Latin. I'm not going to pretend to read Latin. So, and then we also have the Law of Nations, which I had up just previously, doing some other research here. And the Constitution, which uses defense. Law of Nations, defense. I don't believe defense with an S is in here. I'm pretty sure I looked already. Nope, nothing. Nothing. Let's go back just so I can make sure, because you would be surprised at the things people argue about. They'll say that I didn't do it right, or I was doing something to make it look some way that it wasn't. So I'll just see nothing. It's still spinning here. We're waiting for that to finish. And I've got tons and tons of digital dictionaries that I look through. And there is no defense with an S in any dictionary that I've found so far. That's not to say that you won't find one in some obscure dictionary somewhere. I'm sure it's with an S in a Latin dictionary, a Latin English dictionary, but I didn't bother to check those because I already know defense with an S is a Latin word. So when the United States attacks a foreign nation, goes over to a foreign nation and attacks it, they're not abiding by the Constitution. Okay, they're going outside of the Constitution. And the Department of Defense, when they spell it with an S, means the Department of Vengeance, doesn't it? If that's a Latin word, then doesn't it mean the Department of Vengeance? Okay, so my point here is that defense with the C is the word used in the Constitution. You can find it at uscode.house.gov. It's in the various dictionaries. There is no defense with an S. There's no defense with an S in the dictionaries. And Washington, who had checked out from the Congressional Library the Law of Nations, I forget exactly what year it was. And Law of Nations is the natural law for nations and sovereigns. And it does not use the word defense with an S. It only uses defense with a C. Okay, this is by Joseph Chitty, 1853. This is the English version of the Vattals Law of Nations, which is also mentioned in the Constitution. Okay, so I also want to point out to you that anyone who tells you that the judges so far have just been doing the best that they can and they have to follow the law, well, if the law is that the constitutions, either state or federal, are the law of the lands and that they come before the legislation, that they're only following the laws, then you need to ask yourself what they're really trying to say, because to me it sounds like they're trying to tell us that the judges are innocent of any wrongdoing. I disagree with that. I don't think they're innocent of any wrongdoing. If I have like 2 classes in political science on at the college level. All the rest of this I've done on my own, or I've had people who've been studying this for a long time help me. And when I say on my own, I just mean going out and reading books, because I have a passion to know truth. I have a deep curiosity of just things in general. And so I sit and I just read books and read books, and I ask people questions, people that I think might have an answer, and I take their information and I think about it and I apply it to the things that I've read and I try to make sense of it. And then I share it with you in videos. So when people tell me that these judges who've got 8 years or more of education and years of experience sitting on the bench, that they can't sit down and read the Constitution and understand what it actually says, and that when they're administering the law, they don't take into account what the Constitution says. I heard that from someone recently, that the judges are just doing their job. Well, the judges have been taking property from private citizens in the name of government, which goes against the fundamental principles of our constitutions. So it kind of sounds to me like someone's trying to make it appear as though the judges are innocent when they're not. They are supposed to be the first line of defense. They're supposed to wield their little hammers with justice, and with they have to be worthy. Okay, I did a video on this, and it's stuff found in a Freemasons book, actually, and they talk about Thor and Odin, and the being worthy of wielding the hammer of justice. Okay, and this goes back to the courts back in the Gothic times, and the I think it was the Norse guilds, the guilds of the Norse people and the Gothic people. They had like clubs, and some of the first ones were the Freemasons, who came up with the court system, much like the one we use today. And so it makes sense that the judges should be worthy to use those hammers to lay down the law. And there's a lot of stuff written in some of these Freemason books about the 3 taps: tap, 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 how they, tap with their hammer. Order in the court. Okay, that number 3 is an important number in Freemasonry when it comes to that hammer and wielding the power of justice. Okay, so all this is connected, and I'm trying to make connections for people so that they can better understand what the Constitution is, what the Constitution is not, what the government is, what the government is not, what the state is, what the state is not, the various types of states, what a law is, and when a law is unnatural, and when the legal system starts overstepping its bounds and steps outside of the law of nature to be just a complete fiction. Okay, I talk about as much as I can to help people understand. Okay, so this is your defense. Like, share, and subscribe, and I will see you guys in the next video.